we actually mirrored the diversity that is so beautifully represented across New York City and actually bring all of the people, cultures, backgrounds, languages, socioeconomic diversity into one community and demonstrate that every kid and adult who's a part of this community can thrive equally without disparity.
You're listening to the Bold by Choice podcast with Vashanta Harris and Jim Gunner. Real talk about charter schools, from the boardroom to the classroom. Powered by the National Charter Schools Institute.
Well, good morning and welcome back, colleagues and friends. We are here again at the Bold by Choice podcast. And this season, we're super excited because we're spotlighting schools that we believe are worth bragging about and the leaders behind them who have been boldly reimagining what is truly possible for students. I'm Vashanta Harris, and in this season, we are partnering with the Diverse Charter Schools Coalition to highlight very intentionally diverse, high-performing public charter schools across the country, places where students are not just prepared for tests, but for life.
And I'm Jim Gunner, and we love to talk about proving the promise of chartering, because at the heart of chartering is choice, not just choice of schools, but the freedom to design learning environments that reflect who students are and who they are becoming. Today's school lives deeply into that promise. It's a place where inquiry, identity, and belonging aren't extras. They're foundational to how students learn and grow.
That's right, Jim. And I'm so excited that our travels today is going to take us to Brooklyn to visit Prospect Schools, a network that is intentionally designed to bring together students from different racial, socioeconomic, and cultural backgrounds and offer them a world-class, inquiry-driven education. Prospect Schools was one of the first intentionally integrated charter school networks in New York City and very grounded in the International Baccalaureate framework, and built the belief around that diverse communities really make learning richer for everyone involved. And I'm super pumped for you all to meet our special guest today, Tresha Ward, CEO of Prospect Schools, a leader whose own journey reflects grit and purpose and deep commitment to ensuring students have real access to opportunity. Welcome, Tresha. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, I would love to first start off by offering you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our guests.
I was trying to think about how I wanted to frame my story, and I would say, I think a few words anchor leader who I am and are the guide for what I would say is my personal story as leader: purpose, legacy, and enough. I'm the daughter of West Indian immigrants. I'm a first generation college student born and raised in the Bronx. And my parents instilled in me the importance of going to school, getting an education as a way of, building a life of choice and opportunity. And so, I did exactly what they wanted me to do. Went to school through my K through 12 education and got good grades, got scholarships. Also, the daughter of West Indian immigrants, my parents wanted me to be pre-med. And so when I went off to college at Vanderbilt, that's what I pursued. My first year was really tough. I took all these pre-med classes and then struggled greatly and, unfortunately almost failed out of college. And I think that was when I didn't have a name for it at the time, but realized that my educational experience was really different growing up in the Bronx than others who had more access and opportunity. And that kind of set me on the path toward my purpose, which was to ensure that no kid, especially any kid that kind of came from a similar background as my own, ever made it that far and realized they didn't have the tools to pursue whatever they wanted. So that kind of propelled me to pursue teaching with Teach for America in Houston. I fell in love with it. I went on to open a school that I actually named Legacy. And, I've been in education for now more than 20 plus years. And I kind of learned what it meant to be a leader who's able to drive really hard for outcomes for kids, but also lead with purpose through the people that I'm doing this work with. And so this idea of purpose and legacy and, building new trajectories for a life of opportunity for kids has been my guiding principle. And then the word enough, I do this work as a Black woman. And, I think the word enough is just a continuous reminder around pursuing continuous improvement rather than perfection as I do this and modeling that for those I lead.
Trisha, it strikes me that maybe you still are in med because you're working on mind, body, and spirit and bringing it all together and making it happen both for kids and adults. But I love your story. Let's talk about legacy just for a minute because we're home to the National Charter School Founders Library and we get to tell the stories of the founders and in some ways protect and preserve their legacy as well as the legacy of chartering. You came at this 28 years ago. You've given your heart and soul to it in so many ways. What makes you give so much and how do you want to be remembered?
That's such a powerful question. No matter what role I'm sitting in, I've had the privilege of being a teacher, a principal. I've led work nationally. I've been in a network and now leading a network as the CEO. I think no matter how many layers removed I am between myself and students and kids, I think that's just always been my North Star, making sure that no kid has the experience that I had, which was believing that you're prepared to pursue a dream and then realizing you actually don't have those tools. And so that is what helps me get up every single day. It's what gets me through the toughest moments. It's what helps me push my team with intensity and love and care, and also push the kids that we serve with love and care and intensity as well. I think the legacy that I want is to be remembered by is just doing that consistently. That like I always led with the purpose in mind, which was the students that we serve.
I love that. One of the things we say at the Institute is we want all kids to dream big, right? Just have these monster dreams, but not just dream, get prepared academically, right? So they can go pursue those dreams and achieve them. And in your own story, you didn't found the school, you came in and followed the founder. Talk to us about that transition and your own leadership.
Yeah. I had the privilege of leading Prospect after Dan Rubenstein and Louis and Chow helped found it. Dan was the founder and the leader of the school for about 12 years before I took over in 2021. And, having been a founder myself as a few like 10 years ago as a principal, I think, you know, being the successor to a founder, I think is really special, right? It's important for you to both understand the past, so that you can honor it, and then also preserve the parts of it that continue to make an organization special, and then build upon it. And I think it's one of the things that was really important to me was taking the time when I started with Prospect to understand the mission, understand the purpose, understand the core guiding principles, because that was the core that we're trying to preserve, even as we, move our organization from its founding state to its next stage of evolution, right? Like the mission and the values and our original intention are all things that we want to preserve. There's so many strengths to Prospect when I took over. I mean, the number of staff members who celebrate reaching 5 and 10 year milestones when I came and continue each year is in the 20s and 30s. And I just think that's unheard of in, charter spaces, right? The longevity of staff members and people stay because they feel connected to the mission. They feel connected to the values, connected to our purpose. They feel seen. And those are things I didn't want to lose, only build upon as I took over.
I love that because it's tricky to take over for a founder, right? I mean, founders give blood, sweat, and tears to create these schools, and to have somebody that did that and ran it for 12 years and to take it over. I'm assuming having been a founder yourself, it helped you understand that perspective. It's not just a job, right? It's a mission and a calling.
It's a mission, it's a calling. Every wall has a story. Every staff member who's been here longer than me has a story, right? And so it's how do we find a way for all those stories to coexist as we like build towards, that vision, reaching more kids, being shaped by more adults, reaching other communities. And so I think we've done a good job of trying to like marry all the things that made us really special with the new challenges and new opportunities that come with like expanding and growing our network.
Yeah. One of the things that's coming back to me as we were talking a couple days ago in our prep call was how you all really looked at your community. So you looked at Brooklyn and the people who make that space up. And I love the term intentionally diverse. That was a very essential element of the design of Prospect Schools. And I love that it was not optional, right? There took a lot of thoughtfulness and brain power to figure out, like, how are we going to really represent the community that our school sits in? And also ensure that the space is truly built to build up that culture within the school building. So, my next question is kind of around that. Can you talk about the importance of the intentional diversity and then bring it forward to the student's experience? What does that actually look like and feel like and sound like in the day-to-day experience of students?
We sit in New York City, which is one of the most diverse cities in the country, but probably across the world. And we also sit in the largest district in the nation, which unfortunately is also highly segregated. Right now in 2026, New York City is a highly segregated city. When we were founded, we wanted to be a place where we actually mirrored the diversity that is so beautifully represented across New York City and actually bring all of the people, cultures, backgrounds, languages, socioeconomic diversity into one community and demonstrate that every kid and adult who's a part of this community can thrive equally without disparity. We were the first to do it when we were founded, and we continue to strive to be a leader in this space. And that's our diversity is not just something on the surface that sounds good of like putting, lots of diverse people into one room and hoping that it kind of works out. I think if that were the case, you probably see many, many communities like ours all over. And actually you don't see many communities like ours, which is a shame. What we do is we try to ensure that we use this as a learning opportunity, that our students are learning from one another, our faculty are learning from one another, and even our families are learning from one another. It is one of the things I think that makes us really special. And so to give a couple of examples, that looks like in elementary school, our kids are doing deep studies, units of inquiry on a particular country every year, and they go really deep on that country. They spend, 6 to 8 weeks learning about the people from that country, their religious beliefs, their political beliefs, their cultural beliefs, and then turning that knowledge into, a showcase where they are like showcasing all the beauty of that country. And then that showcase is put on by all of our students, our faculty, and even our families. So you have families working together. Like last year was France, and you see families of all different backgrounds working alongside our parents, working alongside our teachers and our students to put up projects that showcase the Eiffel Tower, that showcase, the fashion industry of France, that showcase the languages, the food, the cultural traditions. So it's a whole community learning experience, and that's just like one of the typical projects that our kids get to experience in elementary school. In middle school, they get to do some of those things and others. Like there are projects that our kids have done where they're getting out into the community and they're learning about the Gowanus Canal, and which is in Brooklyn. It's a canal and that's a science project, but it's interdisciplinary. It actually pushes our kids to learn about the communities that they're actually living in, right? So often we kind of walk by, the spaces in our own communities and kind of take that for granted. Um, but our kids are actually getting out and learning about that and then bringing that back in. They're engaging in conversations about the politics, global politics and local politics that are happening day to day. Um, we've had robust conversations across our organization, given the war in Ukraine, given the conflict in Gaza. And so, we have families who are on all sides of these global issues and then, engage in conversations about those real world issues and kind of what does it mean and what does it mean for them as they are thinking about what it means to be a global citizen. And so those are just a couple of examples of the way diversity shows up more than just like sitting side by side and hoping like osmosis happens. That's not what it is here.
Trisha, let's talk about International Baccalaureate. For those that don't know, International Baccalaureate came out in 1950-ish, post World War II, and it's not a set of courses, it's a whole school framework. And there's so much rigor to it that it has a brand and a reputation. How did you decide to adopt International Baccalaureate, and how does it work with your students?
Yeah. I mean, one, I will just say I'm pretty fortunate to have found Prospect. When I was starting off as a principal before Prospect, like 10, 12 years before actually joining as CEO here, I actually founded a school based on International Baccalaureate IB principles. I got an opportunity to learn about this model and framework in grad school and just learned about how it really allows students to, one, build empathy, learn from others, engage critically, develop the ability to ask really challenging questions, the ability to see the interconnections between disciplines, right? Instead of just teaching math and science in silos or humanities and English, our kids are learning about the interconnectedness between topics and subjects and developing really robust research skills that will serve them well. And so finding Prospect was just beautiful because that was already a part of who we were and a part of the framework that really guides our academic model. So, felt a lot of kinship coming to Prospect and a lot of alignment with my own philosophy. And since I've been here, I've seen us really live into that. And it is a pretty rigorous, well-known program, so much so that it's kind of say to families, this is a door opener to colleges and universities. Our kids tend to just rise to the top of application pools because they know that our kids are engaging in, courses like what we call theory of knowledge, of which our kids are like grappling with some really big questions around philosophy in high school. Or they're doing deep research projects where they're coming up with their own prototypes for different products that they want to put out into the world. Um, they're learning about the wars of the history and actually then comparing that to the conflict of the present and really engaging in deep questions about what does it mean to be like globally minded. And I think, it's beautiful for us to, like, be grounded in that. I think we need our kids in this day and age to be global citizens, right? And to be empathetic and to be understanding of, different people, backgrounds, and cultures, and I think it's a really special part of our academic framework, but also our social framework for our kids and our team.
That was beautiful. And, one of the things that I love about it is I get asked a lot of questions when I'm traveling speaking about AI now, right? And the thing about IB is it talks about transferable skills, right? Transferable beyond time, beyond any new technology. These are the things that prepare kids to succeed in a world when there's certain careers and jobs that don't even exist yet because they have these transferable higher order thinking of big ideas and this knowledge of history. So love that you're providing that.
Yeah. I have to be honest, I'm a little bit biased about something we talked about, and I want to kind of bring it to the forefront. And it's something that you said the other day that really inspired me and actually made me reflect back on my own leadership time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should have done that. And you were sharing with us how every year you're very intentional to shadow a couple of students at different grade levels and potentially even different campuses. And that allows you to really experience a day in the life of a student at these different levels. So, what have you learned by implementing that practice, seeing your schools through your students' eyes, and how does that shape your leadership decisions?
Oh, I appreciate that. It's definitely one of my favorite parts of the year. I take a portion of the year and I shadow a high school student, shadow a middle school student at each of our middle schools, and shadow an elementary student at each of our elementary schools. And one, just it's fun, right? I get to meet these really amazing, funny kids. I get to learn about their favorite teachers, their favorite classes, what's hot on the streets, in their world. And, they're also really honest, right? Kids are honest about like what classes they like, what classes they don't like, which teachers are engaging them and how, what topics they really are interested in. I have found it really eye-opening around also just like the rigor that we expect of our kids, right? Our kids are in classes and they are working and they are expected to be on and thinking throughout. And I've learned a lot that I've taken back to our team, whether it's our academic team or whether it's our ops team, whether it's our talent team about who's the kind of teacher that really thrives here. whether it's our academic team and saying, hey, we need to think about this curriculum or this class and the way it's structured, or like coaching for our team or for teachers. But I've also learned, right, that one of our strengths as an organization is the relationships that our teachers build with our kids, and I get to see it firsthand. Like, our kids are known, and I think it's one of the things that really makes us special. We are not, while our schools, are like healthy in size and all that, our kids don't get lost through the cracks. And so each teacher, spends the time to get to know each kid individually, and it shows. They know their interests, they know what makes them tick, they know where they're winning academically, they also know where they're struggling. And you can see our teachers really using that
Mhm.
knowledge to connect with kids and really push them to get excited about the content or material. Last week, I actually was just also meeting with one of our principals and their leadership team, and on the table there were these Facebooks where it had the faces of kids, and each year, a couple of times during the year, they sit with a grade level team of teachers and they have the Facebooks, and they actually, go through all the Facebooks of the students, and they say, does this child have an adult who knows them? Can we list a couple of their interests? Can we list their strengths? Can we list their areas of opportunity? And for any question that we say no, there's a teacher or a couple teachers or a couple adults who are assigned to figuring that out. That's just an example of me being able to then see that when I'm shadowing, and actually see teachers using their knowledge of our kids to really propel them to meet these high academic and social bars that we have. So it's not just about the academics, it's about seeing them as like a full human.
But Sean, I want to point something out to our podcast nation. If you're running a school or you're thinking about running a school or an organization, go back and listen to the last 60 seconds of that. How many times did Trisha talk about team? Academic team, leadership team, our team. If you're using the words my staff versus our team, you're losing. And I love to say staff's an infection in a hospital. You just heard a leader talk about team, 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 and that's relationships. And you have relationships as a team, you have responsibilities as a team. It's not the same with the staff. So I really, just a shout out, Trisha, for your language, but also everybody listening, model it.
Mhm. I appreciate that. Um, I also don't use that word in anything that I write for the same reason.
So, Trisha, you talk about the look, the sound, the feel of excellence. Um, there's an old saying you should call yourself. So what that means is like call your own organization. What is it like? What's it sound like? What's it feel like? I love that you're doing that with the students. Do you eat the lunch?
I don't eat lunch as often as I should, and I have not yet eaten. Oh, actually, that's not true. When I shadowed, I have eaten the lunch.
Good,
Mhm.
because that tells you a lot too. Um,
It does. It does.
so someone walks into prospect school for the first time. Talk to us. What do they feel?
Yeah. Well, one, it's not gonna be quiet. I think that's the first thing, right? Like, you're going to see kids bopping up and down the hallways. You're gonna see kids say hi. You're gonna see kids probably introduce themselves to you and ask you who you are. You are gonna see kids in small groups. You're gonna see kids working side by side. When you walk into a classroom, you are gonna see warmth and joy from teachers as they're like asking kids different questions or engaging them. You're gonna hear kids pushing each other, kids giving each other feedback, sometimes saying that's not actually right. You're gonna see kids debating with teachers, right? Like, critically pushing. You're gonna see teachers asking questions and then giving kids the opportunity to grapple both verbally, to grapple in writing. And you're gonna see, like, we have technology, but that's a part of the equation, not the whole equation. And so sometimes you will see kids engaged in technology, but many times you'll see them engaged in like projects and books and actual like concrete work that they're grappling with. And so that's something that we try to like find the right balance. And of course, as it's an important life skill that our kids are tech literate, but we also are trying to make sure we strike a healthy balance around those tools and how they're used. You're gonna hear a lot of buzz. You might learn about the project of the day, which depending on the school might be anything from learning about, a famous artist who's a social justice warrior to learning about joining a class for kids learning about the different religions, core religions, Muslim, Christianity, et cetera, and Hinduism, and then comparing those. Um, those are some of the things that you'll hear. It'll feel warm. It'll also feel like urgent in like a healthy way,
Mhm.
but also joyful. Our kids wear tutus, in elementary school, right? Like, they wear their prospect top, and we allow them to wear, um, whatever pants and bottoms they decide, and so you'll see their personality also kind of shine through in that. And I think that's one of the things that makes us really special.
Yeah, I'm hearing three words: engagement, zest, and joy. And boy, wouldn't we all want to go to a school where you feel those things? And I always brag when I take my youngest, Natalie, to Renaissance Public School Academy, the charter school here. She loves to go to school. And that's the kinds of environment kids love to be in.
Yep. That's a core question we ask our kids every year. Do you like your school? Mm, And so, our goal is to make sure that the vast majority of our kids are saying yes.
And the adults too, right? That probably
Yes.
plays a part of your really strong retention numbers. Is there's so much joy and excitement and passion coming through the entire body of the school, right? The classrooms, the hallways, the lunchroom, I'm sure the playground, everywhere.
But Shannon, I just want to tie into that. There was a fundamental power shift with chartering. And we went from an assignment system to a choice system. And that you now ask your kids, do you like school? Is part of the power shift. You can no longer take your students or your teachers for granted. And I just want the audience that's been listening to us along the way or hasn't, that's a really big point, and it's part of the paradigm shift that chartering brought. And I love that you're putting that into action.
We know that keeping our team is what makes our school special. And so it's also really important to us not only to ask our kids, do you like coming to school, but we regularly ask our adults what's working, what isn't. And we really take that feedback to heart to make sure that we are thinking about policies and practices that impact them, but also help us strengthen our culture. One of the data points that I'm really proud about is that of a staff of over 400 and 30 odd plus across our organization, we retained 82% of our staff coming into this year, which is kind of just unheard of, right? Like, being an educator is hard, right? The year is long, it ebbs and flows, and it's a job that brings a lot of like personal reward, but also is not you know not always easy. And, the last couple of years, especially for education, coming out of COVID has also been challenging. And so we feel really proud about the policies, practices, the intention, the care that we pour into our adults who then pour into our kids, right? Because that's what we know if we pour into them, they will pour into our kids. And we measure retention from the first day of school of the previous year to the first day of school of the current year. And so for us to keep 82% of our whole staff, this means consistency, and for our kids, which is just fundamental to, like, our ability to serve them well.
Yeah, that's right. Something we've been talking about here at the National Charter Schools Institute, and actually we go to a lot of conferences, and this conversation's bubbling up. Um, and it's really around when students are getting ready to graduate from high school, what do they have true access to? And even over the holidays here recently, I was talking to some of my own cousins who are recent college graduates or seniors, and they're talking about this conversation in university around what are they actually going to do when they graduate. It's really tough these days. And one thing I heard you say that I'd like to hear more about is you say, you know what, at Prospect, yes, we have very high expectations of our students, but we also are making them life ready. And that term just really kind of like got my gears going. So what does that mean at Prospect schools? What does that mean for students that they're getting prepared for life?
Yeah. We did some work over the last, year plus to really get clear about the skills and the habits that we want to make sure all of our kids leave our doors with. And I think we've always done a good job of the life ready in terms of what I said before, which is like, they know how to critically think. They know how to think about global issues. They know how to ask challenging questions. They know how to kind of grapple with complex topics. I think as we continue to think about what life ready means, we're also thinking about, what does that mean in terms of digital literacy? What does that mean in terms of financial literacy? And those are things that we're building towards in our program. We've also thought about what does it mean to be life ready, not just when you graduate high school, but when you actually graduate from college, and like how do we support our prospect alums through, their experience navigating college and beyond. And over the last, 2 years, we have started to do more work around engaging our alum and supporting them it to be life ready, right? Not just like ending at the end of senior year, but also thinking about what does it look like through college. So we've actually went out to our alumni and we asked them, what were things that you actually wanted that you didn't have as you were navigating your journey, both like through college, to and through college, and even after college. What are some things that you wish that you had in terms of support? What are some things that when you think about the work field that you would want? And then from there, we actually have been piloting partnerships with a couple of different programs to offer some of those supports. One of those partnerships is a partnership with Brave and X, of which we have cohorts of students, alumni who are in college right now, taking what's the equivalent of a college level rigorous course that supports them on, interview skills, resume skills, landing their first job. How do you show up for your first job? How to, what are the things that you need to ask during an interview process? What will you be asked, but also what do you need to ask, as someone who's being interviewed for a job? How do you think about job prospects? And so that's one partnership that we have. We also have a partnership with KIP that has a really, strong and kind of nationally renowned college persistence programming. And so we also have a set of alumni who are partnering through that, and working on just like what does it mean to persist through college, right? What does mentorship look like, and also how you pay that forward. And then we are so fortunate that we actually have several alumni who are part of the faculty across prospect schools. And I think that's the real test, right? When kids who graduate feel so much connected to this community that they decide to come back and give back service. And so also talking to them about, what would you have wanted, and how do we then use that information to shape the program that we offer our current K through 12 students, but also, each cohort of alumni. And so those are some of the things that we think about when we think about life ready. And I think we're excited about some of the things we are looking forward to around digital literacy and financial literacy as like some other programming that we're working towards making offering to our students so that they continue to have those skills, so they can be prepared for all that comes with being an adult.
I mean, it's so important. I think about my own high school experience. Even college, I think it was like once I started teaching, I went to TFA right after college. It was through those HR sessions that I actually started trying to figure out, oh, I'm going to get a check. I probably should have a budget. There's going to be taxes. Like I had no concept of what it meant to be an adult managing money. And I love to hear you all at the high school level, middle school level, building those skills with students. That's really important.
Yeah. I also went through the same and learned some lessons the hard way by getting credit cards that I probably shouldn't have. But, we have a director of finance who's like very passionate about how do we teach our kids investing? How do we teach them some skills like that? And so I'm excited about some of the work that we're planning to really like start to help build those skills earlier so our kids can again just be strong stewards, their personal resources, but also, this goes back to legacy trajectory changing, right? Like learning from, our mistakes so they can build a new legacy.
I love that because if you don't understand money, doesn't matter how hard you work, you're going to end up in trouble. And it certainly seems like, while we're in school learning that that's one of the things we cover. So, Trisha, we got to head towards the finish line. And they say the one thing about leaders is they're always learning and growing. So here's the question for you. What's something you've learned from your students this year, and how are you going to put it into practice?
I watch our students tackle challenges without fear. I see our kids be risk takers, right? I think sometimes as you become an adult, you get a little bit more risk averse. And then I also see that when they make mistakes, they are able to learn from those and bounce back. And I think watching our kids grow over the year, right? Like, tackle new topics and tackle them kind of without fear, but also like, when they make mistakes or fall short of, the goal that they keep going. I think those are always constant reminders as a leader of, again, this like idea of continuous improvement over perfection. And they constantly remind me that, like, right, this is a long journey that we're on. And so, how do we use every moment, tackle every moment with like um courage and the ability to take risks, and then also reflect and keep going, even in the face of like making mistakes.
I love that. No fear, take risks. Fall seven, rise eight, as the Japanese proverb says, right? But Shanta, that sounds like bold by choice. We got to send
It
them some
does.
bold by choice hats and
That's right.
Oh,
get one for Trish and some of those students.
That's
they'd
right.
love that.
That would be beautiful.
Our kids would
Well,
love that.
Trisha, we just want to say a heartfelt thank you. Your gift of spending time with us, sharing with us more about your own leadership, your students and teachers, and everything about Prospect Schools. We don't take it for granted. So thank you so much for spending time with us today.
I appreciate the invitation to join you and just to brag on all of the people and kids that make Prospect really special. So just thank you.
Absolutely. Well, friends, if this episode resonated with you, we encourage you to share it. Share it with another educator, a parent, a student, even. Especially those folks who really believe that schools should reflect the world that our students live in and prepare them to shape it in its next iteration. We all know great schools do not happen by accident. They happen because a community of leaders, teachers, parents, and so many other stakeholders really choose courage. They choose clarity, they choose care. And Jim, you know our favorite word, they choose to love these babies every single day. So, listeners, we thank you for tuning in. And whatever you do next, stay bold by choice, and we'll be back next week.